welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and it is so good to have you here. Today, we're discussing third parties in New Jersey and why former Governor Christie Whitman left the Republican Party to join the new Forward Party. David Wildstein, editor of the New Jersey Globe, is standing by. First, we turn our attention to the cost of doing business in New Jersey. We have a New Jersey assemblyman who is calling on the state legislature to take action and reduce the New Jersey corporate tax. Assemblyman Christopher DePhillips represents New Jersey's 40th legislative district, which covers parts of Bergen, Essex, and Passaic counties. All right, Assemblyman DePhillips is joining us now. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Welcome to the show.
Laura, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, let's just first of all talk about New Jersey. We've got the highest corporate tax rate in the nation, 11.5%. Why? Why are we so expensive?
But we're expensive in corporate business tax. We're very expensive, the highest in the nation in property taxes, and both of those issues are a real concern for me. Trenton has an addiction to taxes and spending, so I'm trying to bring a different type of conversation to Trenton, where we need to talk about lowering taxes, lowering spending, so families and businesses can afford to stay in the state.
Recently, Pennsylvania cut its corporate tax. What kind of a impact, if any, has it had on New Jersey?
Well, Pennsylvania is targeting our businesses and our families and our jobs and our executives, and they want them to cross the Delaware River into the Keystone State. We need to do the same in New Jersey, and I've been touting this for a number of years. We need to reduce our corporate business tax. It's the highest in the nation.
Well, what types of businesses are paying that corporate tax? Are we talking? Are they the big pharmaceutical companies, or is it more the local mom and pop shops?
It's businesses over $100,000 and businesses over $1 million. So it does encompass a lot of businesses, not just the biggest pharma companies and the biggest manufacturing entities. It's something that touches most businesses.
Can you give any examples of businesses that are moving out?
Well, I hear from businesses all the time in my district and outside of the district, and I've been hearing this for the 5 years I've been in the legislature. They're going to other states, not just Pennsylvania, but Massachusetts, Indiana, South Carolina, North Carolina. North Carolina has the lowest corporate business tax in the country, and my legislation is modeled on the North Carolina law, which would reduce the corporate business tax in New Jersey to 2.5% over 4 years. It's no surprise that businesses and families are moving to North Carolina. You've heard it, I'm sure. So, we need to respond in kind.
Well, can you talk a little bit about your legislation, how it would work? And you mentioned it would cut it because right now it's at 11.5%, and you're saying that you would cut it to what?
2.5% over 4 years, a gradual approach.
How do you do
Yeah.
that?
It just reduces, an equivalent amount each year over that 4 year period. Pennsylvania is doing something similar, reducing their corporate business tax over 10 years to 5%. So it's a more gradual decline. I'm most concerned about, businesses, leaving for states like North Carolina. They're eating our lunch already. So I think we need to be more aggressive in New Jersey, particularly because Pennsylvania set its sights on us now.
Well, what happens if we don't cut our taxes? Because you might have people say, well, we have to keep them high because we need, we are dependent upon X, Y, and Z, this amount of income from the corporations to be able to sustain certain levels of quality of life.
Yeah, Laura, let's remember that federal money is basically, falling from the sky at this point. With COVID money coming into the state, we can afford at this point to take down the corporate business tax because our state treasury is not only flush with the CBT revenues, but with federal support coming into the state. And we need to do an accounting on that as well, so we know exactly what's coming in. But it certainly has supported the state treasury, and I think it helps us, support the concept that our corporate business taxes need to go down, not to mention property taxes.
Is this going to keep businesses here, or will it attract new businesses, or a
Both.
combination?
Both for sure. I hear from business leaders who have already left the state. The corporate business tax was a primary reason for exiting. And I know other businesses in our region would look to New Jersey. And we've heard that in our business associations that represent the business community in Trenton have told me that, and I hear from them as well. So yeah, we want to attract new businesses into the state, new jobs. We do have an unemployment, challenge for sure in New Jersey. So why not attract businesses from other states into the Garden State? We all love the Garden State, and our families live here, and we want to keep them here.
Well, you mentioned making sure that they have a workforce. So if you were able to accomplish this and if you were able to pass the legislation passed and lower the corporate tax, do businesses have the resources they need as far as a workforce that's ready to go to
Yeah.
support their business? Because I've talked about this with other guests. Is we've got some of the best education systems in the country here, but then our students, after they graduate high school, they go to other states and they take what they've learned elsewhere because it's less expensive to live. So, do you have that workforce
Yeah,
who's willing to live here as well?
that's a legitimate issue. I have, two college graduates of my own, and they're looking at other states. One's actually in another state. She's in Massachusetts. My son has graduated as well from college, and he has stayed here thus far. But they are being enticed to other states because of quality of life, affordability, and to other issues. So you raise a very good point about the workforce. I know the New Jersey Business and Industry Association is working hard on that. We do need a labor force ready to go, and that would be a good problem to have if these businesses did stay here and didn't exit the state, or we attracted new businesses. That's something I think we can put our heads together on, the governor, the legislature, and across party lines for sure. You raise a very important point.
Yeah. Well, what has the response been on the other side of the aisle for reducing the corporate tax?
I have spoken privately to my friends and colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Many of them support this privately. It's getting some of them over the finish line and to get to the point where they can publicly support this. The CBT has been very good to the state treasury, a little bit too good for my liking. So with, like I said, some of the federal money that's been coming into the state, I think it has shown many that we don't need to keep our corporate business tax the highest in the country. We can certainly bring it down, and we can bring it down gradually.
Right, right. Um, you said, we lose a lot of businesses to North Carolina, but Pennsylvania in particular has really been targeted in New Jersey. Are there
For sure.
certain businesses that they are looking, they've got their eye on, and you're saying, hey, listen, in New Jersey, we cannot bear to lose this type of business or this particular industry in the state?
Yeah, for sure. They're focusing on life sciences. I mean, life sciences is strong, very strong in New Jersey. We've been a hub for decades. We've lost a lot of life sciences businesses to Massachusetts, the Cambridge corridor up there. They've taken a lot of our executives and companies up there. Pennsylvania is most certainly trying to do the same, and North Carolina has already done that. It has the Research Triangle in North Carolina, and a lot of those life sciences jobs and executives have gone south, and they've also gone west. So New Jersey has an extremely strong pharma sector, biotech, and medical device. All of these states are looking to get that intellectual capital into their states, and not to mention life sciences, but also the manufacturing sector in New Jersey, the chemical industry, et cetera. Very strong, has always been strong, but you are seeing flight.
Right. Well, so have you been working, like you said, with New Jersey Business and Industry Association, with Chambers of Commerce? Who's coming to you, and what are they saying?
The New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, NJBIA, BioNJ. Back in 2018, when I was a newer member of the legislature, that's when the legislature, without any warning, had a surcharge added on top of the already high corporate business tax. And that was at the budget cycle that year, the end of June 2018. The business community was not even notified by the majority leadership that it was going to go in that direction. And they were not even at the table. Let's have a conversation about these things before we, impose these burdens on the business community. The business community in New Jersey wants to be at the table. They deserve to be at the table. They represent a lot of businesses in my district and throughout the state. So that was a very upsetting development for them, and we haven't recovered since then. And so I'm trying with my legislation to address that.
What do you fear will happen if you don't get this accomplished? Do you have a timeline? Are you trying to get it accomplished? How quickly would you like to get this accomplished?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is dire. We should probably have a special session of the legislature. We're in summer session. We have gone back at different times in different years in August or July to address pressing concerns. Now with Pennsylvania doing this, I mean, it's very simple for businesses and executives to just cross the river. And I see that in the northern part of the state where I live. I live in Bergen County. New York does this regularly, where they try to entice businesses on the border in Bergen County, Passaic, Sussex, over the border with various policies. So Pennsylvania is clearly targeting us. And it's easier. It's just physically easier in terms of infrastructure to move the workforce, to move employees across a river than it is to say go down to North Carolina or South Carolina or states down there. So I consider this a real threat. It's urgent as far as I'm concerned, and it's dire. And we can afford to bring down the CBT. It doesn't need to be the highest in the state. We have the highest property taxes, as I mentioned before. Our business climate is, always is ranked quite low, if not dead last. And, the CBT is one of those areas. Maybe it hasn't gotten as much attention as the property tax, but it is a primary reason why businesses either stay or leave a particular state.
Is there one particular hurdle that you have in the way of getting the corporate business tax lowered?
Yeah, it's a culture. It's the culture in Trenton. I mean, I can't say I'm a new member anymore. I've been there 5 years. It's a culture, and I call it an addiction. And I've said that, used that word before, that, it has to be more every year. When I became a member of the legislature, the state budget was 34 billion. Now it's 51 billion. I mean, to me, that's a shocking increase. And we have to put the brakes on mindless increases year over year. I mean, we do have pension obligations, and that's a big challenge. And I've been speaking out on that as well. But the state is going to go off the fiscal cliff if we don't stop the spending year over year over year. And families and businesses and senior citizens, I hear from seniors in my district that they can't afford the taxes anymore, and they're going to leave their children and grandchildren. That's a sad thing. I'm down at the shore this week, and I see families together, grandparents on down. We shouldn't want to split up families in our state. And I hate to tell you, but then it's happening.
Right. Well, and then there was a time in Trenton where it seemed that half the workforce lived in Pennsylvania because it was way less to live in Pennsylvania than it is to New Jersey.
Yeah, I see that still is the case. I'm an executive in Morristown. That's my day job, in addition to being a member of the legislature. And many of our employees live in Pennsylvania, and it is not an easy drive. It's over an hour to get to Morristown, and they're living there because of affordability issues. Property taxes are lower, and home values are valued lower, and it entices them over the border. And that is a long drive every day. Now with gas prices, that's adding a lot of stress to them as well.
And they still live there
They're
because
still doing it.
it's still
They're
worth
still
it to
doing
them. Yeah. All right. Well, Assemblyman, we thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. We really appreciate it.
Great, Laura. Great to see you.
Former New Jersey Governor Christie Whitman is back in politics, but this time it is not as a candidate. The former Republican is co chairing the Forward Party, which was founded by former Democratic presidential candidate and candidate for New York City Mayor Andrew Yang. Last week, I had the opportunity to speak with Governor Whitman about why she decided to get involved with the Forward Party.
It's about bringing people back to the center. It's about getting to a point where moderates and conservatives and liberals can feel comfortable under the same umbrella and understand that they share core values, things like economic security, the freedom, individual freedom, security at home, defending our democracy. We share those values. And that's what we need to understand and come together under that. And then we can have different ways of deciding how we want to be on the hot button issues. But, once you get people together and start talking about things like abortion and gun control, you can often get to a point where you'll say, okay, I can agree on that. I can give a little here, give a little there. And that's how you start making progress.
Joining us now to discuss this and more is the person who founded what was the go-to site for political news devoted to New Jersey politics nearly 18 years ago. Don't know where the time goes. He was known as Wally Edge on politicsnj.com. So much has happened since then. Today, we're happy to have David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, joining us today. David, welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Laura. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, first, I've got to get your thoughts about hearing Governor Christie Whitman is back in the news again, getting back into politics, not as a candidate, though. What are your thoughts?
She's a towering figure in New Jersey politics, and I've got a lot of respect for her. But third parties, independent parties, are extraordinarily difficult. They have, since the founding of the Republic, we have been a two-party nation and a two-party state. And nobody else has ever had success at building a third party movement before.
Yeah. Well, after especially 2020, this country seems more polarized than ever. So you would think that their message would resonate because they're not about right. They say we're not about left, we're not about right. We're about getting together. And most people, when you poll them, that's how they feel. They aren't on the extreme. So their message certainly seems to be something that would resonate.
We have to see what they stand for. It's very easy to say I'm on the middle, but the devil's in the details. Some people, being in the middle is defined in the eyes of the beholder, and we don't really know what that means. And it means being in the middle means different things in different states or in different counties or different towns. I want to see what their message is. I want to see what their platform is. Parties have platforms, and you sort of know where they stand. And the Republican Party, where Governor Whitman came from and led, she was considered a moderate. She was a fiscal conservative. There was nothing liberal about Christie Whitman when it came to the state's finances, but she was pro-choice, and she was more so you might consider her to have been on the left on the abortion issue, which today is more highly charged than it was when she was governor. We don't know where this party is going to be on guns. We don't know where they're going to be on judges. We don't know a lot about them yet, or who's leading them beyond Christie Whitman and Andrew Yang.
Right, who was a former Democratic candidate
Right.
for president, as well as a former candidate for mayor in New York. Now, so Christie Whitman, as you mentioned, she was never really viewed as a conservative. Do you think did she change, or did the Republican Party change?
The party has clearly changed. This is not the Republican Party that her dad, Webster Todd, who was the Republican state chairman, close ally of Dwight Eisenhower. This isn't his party anymore. This isn't the party of Governor Tom Kean. And you see Tom Kean Jr. running for Congress in a hugely competitive race. Tom Kean Jr. is more conservative than his dad was, more conservative than his grandfather was, who helped teach me a lot about politics as a kid. Yet you see conservatives in New Jersey, and they say, well, Tom Kean's not conservative enough. So everybody's got this view of what is a Republican and what's a Democrat. And it's important to say that Democrats are having the same internal problems these days as Republicans are. Democrats have a tug of war between the left and the far left, and Republicans have it between the right and the far right. And everybody who's in the middle, they have different pieces of their own ideology that are not entirely dissimilar to where their party is. So I don't know what votes they're going to peel off here.
Isn't that kind of the case when you're running? You have to appeal more to the extreme sides to get through a primary, and then when you're running in a general election, you can go a little bit more center.
That's exactly it. And you don't want to go too far to one side and make yourself unelectable in a general election where there's a lot of centrist voters. And in New Jersey we call them unaffiliated, but they're commonly known as independents, people who are not a member of either political party, but they lean a certain way. And they don't want to be offended. And, I don't want to go too much of a politics geek on you, but
Go ahead.
so I remember 1981, 41 years ago, Governor Tom Kean was running for governor for the first time. There were 8 Republicans in the field, and his job was to figure out, how do I make myself conservative enough to win the primary, but not too conservative as to cause him to lose the general. He picked the death penalty. He ran, and that wasn't really an issue in 1981. They weren't. New Jersey no longer had the death penalty on an active basis, but he made it an issue. And he went to Republican primary voters and he said, if I'm governor, I'm going to make sure, I'm pro death penalty and I'm going to restore the death penalty. It was the perfect issue for a moderate to conservative candidate to stake out in a primary. And in a general, it wasn't a big enough issue to cause unaffiliated voters to go south. And I, I tell this story. I should tell the whole story, which was the architect of that strategy was Roger Stone.
Oh,
So
really?
often, yeah, because Roger Stone at that point he was a Reagan consultant. He was the consultant for Tom Kaine. I don't think anybody questions whether Roger Stone is a conservative or not, and he designed that strategy, so it worked. If you've seen one campaign, you've seen one campaign,
Right.
and I think they're all different. And I think that's going to be a challenge for Governor Whitman and an independent party in New Jersey and nationally, bringing these people together. And I'll say something else, without, I don't want to ramble too long on this, but I've seen this before. I saw it when Ross Perot attempted to form the Reform Party. And what happens is you get all these people that come in the door because they haven't found a home in the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, and they're looking for a place.
But another huge issue, even if people align with what it is they stand for, is being able to raise money and trying to go up against the Democratic and Republican Party to raise money. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket. What they've raised thus far, I think it was maybe somewhere $5 million as opposed to billions.
It is all about the money, and I'm not saying that's good or that's bad, but that is a reality. It costs money to run a campaign. And especially, and you and I have talked about this before with the media, with a shrinking local media that doesn't cover local races, and local races even means the U.S. House of Representatives. There's no such thing as free publicity anymore because they're just not covered, and that has shifted the burden of communications onto a campaign and has made these campaigns more expensive.
Well, you touched on the 7th congressional district, and that's one that a lot of people are looking at, where Malinowski is the current office holder and Tom Kaine Jr. is challenging him. A lot of people think, well, if one could flip from Democrat to Republican, this could be the one. But
I think that's right. I think that's right. This district became considerably more Republican in congressional redistricting. So this is a seat. I'm going to go geek on you again for a second time, but this is a seat that had never had not reelected a Democratic congressman in over 100 years. They hadn't, before Malinowski, they hadn't elected a Democratic congressman since 1954 in that district. So Malinowski comes in, he wins in the Democratic wave of 2018, very much related to Donald Trump's midterm. And he wins the old 7th by 1 percentage point. That district has become more Republican. It's lost Democratic towns like the town of Union and Milburn and Montgomery, and it's replaced it with a lot of Warren County. So the seat, if you compare apples to oranges, this seat 2 years ago, as the lines are drawn, probably would have elected Tom Kaine. And this is now, it's no longer Donald Trump's midterm. It's now Joe Biden's midterm. And I think and I'm not ready to say that this race is over. Malinowski's a good candidate. He's raising a lot of money. And this is a district that has elected moderates like Leonard Lance before him, and Bob Franks. These are Republicans that are not right-wing conservative, highly conservative Republicans.
right. But Tom Kaine, you're saying, is more conservative than, say, a Christie Whitman.
Yeah, I think he is. I think Tom Kaine Jr.
Jr.
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely do.
Well, in a state that is so highly Democratic and with so many independents, again, I keep going back to this Forward Party and thinking, God, it sounds like they would have a chance, especially in New Jersey, if they have candidates in New Jersey or any type of a third party, because New Jersey is such a independent state. As far as half the voters are unaffiliated, and we tend to go blue.
Yeah, they need good candidates, and they need a lot of money, and good candidates is important. And I've seen people over the years, because I started early. This is my 49th year in New Jersey politics. in the history of the state, only one independent has ever won a legislative race. No independent has ever run a congressional or a statewide. And these are all people. I don't want to age you, Laura, but these are all people Murray Sabin, Chris Daggett. You covered them. They were much heralded as potential either serious candidates or spoilers. And at the end of the day, they both were around 5% of the vote.
Right.
So it's not easy. It's not easy, and you don't build a party. You don't build a party in a year. And the last time there was a new political party was 1856, and that was built over: do you want slavery to continue, or do you want to abolish it? Pretty big issue. And I hope I don't get in trouble for saying it, but a monumentally bigger issue morally than what any of the things we're dealing with today.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, David Wildstein, we thank you so much for
Thank
taking the
you.
time to talk to us and to share your insights. And no, I don't think you dated us too much.
Thanks. Great seeing you again, Laura.
You too. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
And that will do it for today. Thank you so much for joining us here on New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we will see you back here next time.